Hi guys, welcome back to our week 8 online meeting. So, little good news for everybody. I just finished able to add in your extra credits from your first test, but I need everybody to verify the information for me. So, what I need you to do, go to your uh, your your Applia or Mind tab, and then check on the grade on Mind tab for your exam one. Now, if you got an extra credit on there, there should be a little note section next to it. And if you open the note section, it will tell you how many points was added from the extra credit. So make sure to check on that. And if there's anything different, anything, if I miss anything, let me know and I can adjust that for you. Okay, so that's that. Now, um, many people have asked me before that, if they cannot come to the live meeting, is there any other way to get the extra credit? So guys, I decided from this week on, I will change the policy for the extra credit. This is how I'm gonna do it. So from this week on, if you come to the live meeting, you get 3 points. So get one more point now, so 3 points for every live meeting you're participating. And then if you cannot participate live, if you watch the recorded session, then make sure to put your comment in the comment box. That's how I know you are here. So if you watch the recorded section, you will get 2 points extra on each test. I mean, on each week. Okay, so keep coming to live session. You get 3 points each, and then if you're watching the recorded session, you get 2 points each. All right. So if no question at this point, let's start this week's lecture. Now we're gonna cover 2 chapter for this week. But the first chapter is informational. Second chapter is very straightforward. So let's do the first chapters. So the first chapter is the measuring the cost of living. Let me do my screen sharing. All right, so measuring cost of living. Now, guys, my chapter PowerPoint, the chapter number is different than what's on the app layer, but they're all the same chapter. And then if you look on your Canvas right now, the PowerPoint is already posted online, so you can open the PowerPoint and then do this together with me. So let's measure the cost of living. Now, if we learned from last chapter that we can use our we can we can use our GDP and also GDP deflator to find out how much our inflation is. We can also use the price level itself to find inflation, and in this chapter is how we use this other concept to find inflation. Now, first thing first. Let's think one too far. So let's talk about what is CPI. So CPI stands for Consumer Price Index. This is the most common way that our economy or most economy in the world, how they measure inflation in the economy. Now, for CPI, we do have CPI in the economy. And then if you guys ever heard something called BLS.gov, that's where the CPI is. So from the CPI, we know the cost, the average cost of almost everything you buy. Now, and also, guys, eventually, once you guys working, for those who are working right now, you're gonna be familiar with this term. It's called COLA. It stands for Cost of Living Adjustment. Now, what that does, that's an automatic increase in your contract price when there's an inflation in the economy. So suppose that we have, let's say we engage a contract. So let's say right now between K-Pi, think your name's Kim, right? K-Pi, do me a favor, let me know your real name so I can get you the extra credit, because I think I miss you on extra credit. Okay. Now, so let's suppose we have a contract. Let's say I hire Sandy. So Sandy, I'm gonna hire you, and then you're gonna be doing my homework for me. So for the next 20 years, I will pay you $1 for every homework you do for me. Now, maybe in the very beginning, this $1 is a good deal. All right, Kimberly, got it. Thank you, Kimberly. But eventually, let's say to the end of the contract here, so 20 years from now, that $1 is going to be worthless, or at least doesn't worth as much as before. So we need to have this $1 contract price increase automatically when the price of everything else increase, and that is called COLA. So it's cost limit adjustment that's built into most long-term contracts. Now, when those prices change, the contract price will change automatically. So the contract price will be aligned with the price of everything else. All right. Now, to find CPI, it follows very specific steps. So the first step is to define your basket. Now, CPI, this consumer price index, it keeps everything we buy in the market, and then think it as a shopping basket. And this shopping basket has everything in it. So your food items, your what's that called? So your transportations, your rent, the clothing you buy. So everything you buy is in the basket. So first we need to define the basket, and then second we need to find out what the price level is. So for every item you have in the basket, we need to know how much the price is. And then the third step is to compute what the basket cost is. So the total cost, which is you take how many items you have times how much price is, that's your total cost. Now on the quiz, on the test, and also on your homeworks, the first two steps will be given to you. So I will tell you what the basket is, and I will tell you how much the price is. And then you need to do from the third step forward. So the fourth step is to choose a base year and then compute the price index. And the price index, or CPI, the consumer price index, the formula for it is your cost of basket in your current year divided by the cost basket in your base year, and then times 100. And the last step, to find inflation, you're going to use your CPI of this year minus CPI of last year divided by CPI of last year, and then times 100%. This will be your inflation rate. All right, now, for example, suppose our basket over here, this is the basket. We have 4 pizza and 10 lattes. And then this is the prices for each year. And then we can use this information to, so this is the step 1, and this is step 2. So those will be given to you. And then from the third step, which is to find the basket value. So for every year, we need to find out how much does it cost to buy each basket. So for the first year, 2010, I'm going to buy 4 pizzas, and then every pizza $10. So there will be 4 times $10. And then plus latte, we're going to buy 10 lattes, and then everyone's $2. So 10 times 2. So this will be 60. 60, that's your basket cost. And then do the same thing for every other year. So 2011 will be $11 times 4 pizza plus 250 times 10. That's 69. And then last one, 2012, is $12 times 4 plus $3 times 10. That's 78. So this is our third step. Now the fourth step is to find CPI. Now for CPI, we need a base year. So let's suppose our 2010 is base year. And I'm going to use the basket value in 2010 to find the CPI for all the years. So first in 2010, your CPI, so it's your basket value in 2010 divided by basket value in base year, and then times 100, that's 100. Now for 2011, it's your basket value in 2011, that's this number over here, and then divided by the base year basket value, which is 60. So 69 divided by 60 and times 100 is 115. And the last one is your 2012 basket value, 78, divided by the base year, 60. So remember, this base year, this never changes, it's always 60. Okay, so divided by 60, and then your CPI is 130. So this is your step 4. And then the last step, to find inflation. So inflation is always the difference between each year, and it's always the new number minus old number divided by old number. Now, first of all, we cannot find inflation in 2010, because to find inflation for 2010, we need to know what the CPI is for 2009, which we don't have. So the only one we can do is for 2011 and 2012. So the inflation for 2011 will be 115 minus 100 divided by 100 times 100%. So this will be a 15%. And then for 2012, will be 130 minus 115 divided by 115 times 100%. This is 13%. So that's how you find inflation. And this is the last step, step 5. All right, everybody got it? All right, so I know there's a lot of information, but let's do a practice, okay? Guys, if you have a scratch paper next to you, let's start writing, or if you have a computer with you, open up Excel, and then this is very good to do on Excel. So let's look at this problem here. So we have our basket is 10 pounds of beef and 20 pounds of chicken. And then our prices is given in the table. And then let's find out what is the CPI for each year, and then find out what is the inflation for 2011 and 2012. So first thing we're going to do, let me open my spreadsheet. All right, side by side. All right, so first thing I'm going to find out is the, let me put this information in here. So quantity, so chicken. Oh, by the way, guys, I used to work at a restaurant before. So every time we do beef, it's always BF, and every time we do chicken, it's always CK, okay? So the quantity of beef is 10, the quantity of chicken is 20, and then let me type in this little table here. So 20 and 20, 11, oh, there's too many ones, 2012. And the price of beef and the price of chicken. $4, $4, $5, $5, 5 and 6. All right. So first, let's find the basket value in 2010. So basket value in 2010, we're going to use the price of 2010 times the quantity of 2010. So in 2010, we're going to buy 10 pounds of beef, and then each beef is $4, so 10 times 4. And I'm going to buy 20 pounds of chicken, and then each chicken is $4. So basket value is 120. And then the basket of 2011. Ooh, 2011. So we're going to take the 2011 quantity, so 10 pounds of beef times the price of beef plus 20 pounds of chicken times price of chicken, which is 150. And the last one, the basket of 12. This is 10 pounds of beef times 5 pounds of chicken. I mean, 9 pounds, $9 each, plus 20 pounds of chicken times $6 each, which is 120. So this is our basket value. And then next, let's do CPI. So CPI for 2010. Now remember, CPI, now our base year is 2010. So this is our base year. So CPI for 2010, I'm going to use our CPI basket value, 120, divided by base year, which is also 120, and times 100. So our CPI for 2010 is 100. And then CPI for 2011, this will be your 2011 CPI divided by base year, which is 120, and then times 100, 125. Last one, CPI of 2012 will be 210 divided by 120. Now remember, base year never changed. It's always 120, or it's always 2010. If the question says 2010, it's always 2010. Okay, now be careful. Sometimes, now the base year is not always the first year. Sometimes it might be the last year. So be careful, read the question carefully. So for our question, it's always 2010 and times 100, 175. All right, and the last step, step 5, to find inflation. So inflation of 2011. This one, I'm going to use our 2011 CPI minus 2010 CPI, and then divided by 2010 CPI. Well, let me change to percentage. So it's going to be at 25%. And then inflation for 2012 to be our CPI for 2012. And it's a year before, which is 2011. Don't forget the parenthesis. Divided by CPI for 2011. So 0.4, which I believe should be a 40%. Yep, 40%. All right, so 40%. So that's the answer. All right, everybody got it? Does anybody have any question right now? Let me wait for a while. We'll have a lag in transmission. All right, guys, if no question, let's continue. So what is in our CPI? Now, if you look at the current CPI, 41% of all the spending CPI is food and is housing. So what you need to remember is that for average household, about 40% of your spending is all going to housing. Now, this housing is everything you spend on the house, which is your rent, your remodeling, your repairs, your mortgage. So everything you pay to the house, that's called housing. And then for most households, this is 40% of the spending. Now again, this picture is different. It depends on what you're looking, which area you're looking at. Now, if you're looking at cities like San Francisco or New York, where housing is way more expensive than Texas, then they're going to be spending a bigger portion of their household income on housing. Now, in New York City, on average, people spend about half of the income on housing. Now, in Houston, we don't spend that much on housing, but we do spend more on transportation. Okay, so this is the typical picture for average American family. All right, and then next. Now, CPI for inflation is not perfect. And then there's 3 problems with CPI. The first problem is called substitution bias. Now, for the question we just did, the CPI basket is always 10 pounds of beef and 20 pounds of chicken. So for CPI is assuming that our consumer never change behavior. And that's a problem for CPI because consumer do change behavior. Now, if you look at the quantity transaction for 2012, now for 2012 here, price level changed. Now, for the previous 2 years, your chicken and beef are always same price. It's always either $4 or $5. But for 2012, the price for beef increased more than the price of chicken. So now beef is more expensive. And then, if you remember your law of demand, when everything becomes more expensive, we buy less. So when this happens, consumer will be buying less beef, and then because beef and chicken, they're a substitute good, going to be buying more chicken. So in reality, then in 2012, the quantity demand for chicken will go up, quantity demand for beef will go down, and then we shouldn't use 10 and 20 anymore, because in 2012, this 10 and 20 is no longer a representation of how much spending we have, how much stuff we buy. So that is called a substitution bias. It's when household change behaviors, consumer do not change. When household change behavior, CPI do not change quantities, then CPI is no longer an accurate estimation of how much inflation is. All right, so let me continue. Now the second problem with CPI is the introduction of new goods. Now let me go back to the chart we just had before. So we're spending 15% on food, 41% on housing, 17% on transportation, and then medical care is 7%, recreation 6%, education 7%, other good and service 2%, and then apparel is 4%. Now, where does the use of cell phone come in here? Now you might be assuming this is the where other service and good and services. Go back. But that's not the case, because for CPIs, when you use CPI to measure the price increase from one year to the next year, you can only compare them with the same good purchased. So if you want to compare what is the cost of living for difference between 1970 to 2016, well, on certain good you can compare to, so stuff like your housing, your food, and transportation. But if you want to compare how much you spent on cell phone in 1970, and guess what? We didn't have cell phone spending in 1970. But today's cell phone spending is a big part of our economy. And then if you look at the stuff my wife does, she just ordered a new iPhone 7, which cost a fortune. Now, remember back in 1970s, we never had iPhone 7. And then really, for my first phone I used the old Nokia phone. I don't know if you guys seen it before, but let me see if I can find one for you. Let me show you what it looks like. Yeah, my first cell phone was this. You guys seen it before? Yeah. So really back then, everybody had a cell phone. Now, again, we don't use this anymore. But I remember for this phone, I paid $200 for it, and back then it was very expensive. But now, if you're talking about paying $200 for a cell phone, that's nothing. Because with the new iPhone 7, I see that the one my wife ordered, $750 or $800, something like that. So it was very, very expensive. So every time you have introduction of new good, the CPI cannot measure that. Okay, so that's also down for CPI. And the last problem with CPI is called the unmeasured quality change. Now we can also use the old Nokia phones, for example. So if you compare the iPhone 7, which costs you $750, compared to the old Nokia phone, which only costs $200. Now, if you ask CPI, the CPI will tell you, oh, by the way, the iPhone 7 is more expensive, therefore this must be inflation. But that's really not the. I mean, it's not just because price increase. It's because you're buying a better product. Because if you compare the new iPhone 7 to the old Nokia phone, the iPhone 7 can do way more than Nokia phone. So sometimes when you're paying a higher price for the good, you're not just paying more because of price increase. You also pay more because you're getting a much better product. But for CPI wouldn't care about the quality change. The only thing CPI care about is that you paying a higher price for this good, even though it's not the same good anymore. But CPI think you're paying more price for it. So that's inflation. That's a problem. Okay. And then another example, my first truck, I had an old Tacoma before, and then it was a nice little truck. It was very, very fuel efficient, and it was safe. I mean, it's very reliable, but it was a very cheap truck. So I had a roll down window. It wasn't power window, power lock. It was a roll down window. And then if you buy a new truck now, so on the new truck, you have your CD players, your GPS, your power window, power lock. So if you compare the new truck to the truck I had before, the new truck is more expensive. Well, part of it because of inflation, the other part of it because you're paying more, you're getting more trucks for your money. So that again, that's a quality change. But if you ask CPI wouldn't care. CPI would just tell you, oh, by the way, you pay more, therefore there's inflation. But that is bad. Okay. All right. So that's 3 problems with CPI. Let me see. That's not important. Not important. All right. This is important. So comparing dollar figures from different times. Now, people do this all the time. So let's imagine. No, imagine. This is for real now. So in 1963, our minimum wage was at $1.25. In 2013, our minimum wage was $7.25. So on surface, looks like our minimum wage increased by so much more in 50 years. But you got to ask yourself a question. How much is $1.25 equivalent to the value in 2013? Then, sure, your 1963 minimum wage is only $1.25, which is very, very low. But, remember back then, everything was cheap. But now everything's getting more expensive. So is your $1.25 1963 equivalent to your $7.25 in 2013? So we can use our CPI to find out the equivalent value of different prices at different time. Now the formula for it, this is the formula, is your amount in your today's dollar equals to amount in year T dollar times the price level of today divided by price level of year T. So for our example, let's say year T is 1963, today is 2013, and then your minimum wage in year T is 125, minimum wage today is 725. Now what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this 125, convert it from 1963 to 2013, and then see how much that is, and then compare to 725. So we need to know what's our CPI for 2 years. So CPI for 1963 is 30.9. CPI for 2013 is 234.6. So for this formula over here, so the amount in today's dollar, which you're looking for, equals to 125 times your 234.6 divided by 30.9. Let's see what this answer is. Let me see my calculator. $1.25 times 234.6 divided by 30.9. So this is 949. That means your $1.25 in 1963 is equivalent to 949 in 2013. But our 2013 minimum wage was at 725, which means your minimum wage worker today, they earn less than what they did in 1963. And that's the reason why many people have been arguing for a higher minimum wage in the economy. Because right now, your minimum wage is lower than 50 years ago. Okay, so that's how you do it. I'm gonna skip that. Well, let's talk about this. Since you guys are all in school, this should be important to everybody. Is the cost of tuition. Now you guys are very lucky. So when you're attending school now at a community college, your tuition is pretty low. I mean, it's not free, but it's pretty low. But if you ever go into a four-year college, tuition is much, much more expensive. I think right now, if you attending full-time at UH, a semester will cost you what, about $5,000 for tuition and fees. So it's pretty expensive. Now, when I first started college years ago, my very first tuition, or my very first semester at UH, I took 12 credit hours, and cost me what, $1,500. And then the second semester, I took 18 credit hours. It cost me, I believe, was $2,100. So it's way cheaper than what it is right now. So the tuition for the last 15 years or so has been increased dramatically, and there are many reasons behind it. Now you guys might be thinking, oh, the reason why tuition is more expensive because of inflation. Well, inflation didn't increase by that much. Inflation only increased by a little bit. The increase in tuition is way faster than the increase in the inflation of everything else. And then one of the biggest reasons why that is because for the last 15 years, the state of Texas, the state government, has been cutting back on fundings schools. So a big part of your tuition is being reimbursed by the state of Texas. But for the last 15 years, the government of Texas has been cutting back on their part. So which means the students, you guys, need to pay more out of pocket on your part. That's the reason why tuition has been increasing faster than everything else. Okay. All right. That's not important. This is important. So the difference between a real interest rate and then a nominal interest rate. So the formula for it is the real interest rate equals to nominal rate minus inflation. So what this is, the nominal interest rate is the interest rate that the bank published. So if you go to, let's say, Bank of America, and if you open a saving account, they might give you 1% per year. This 1%, that's your nominal interest rate. Real interest rate, you need to take your nominal rate minus inflation. That's your real interest rate. So suppose your nominal rate is 1%, and let's say inflation currently is 2%. Then your real interest rate, so how much are you really getting back from the investment, is going to be negative 1%. That means you're not making any money, you are losing money. So real interest rate equals to nominal rate minus inflation. Okay, so every time you guys hear about inflation rate, think about what is the real interest rate, not what is the nominal interest rate. All right. Okay, so let me see anything else. So that's it for chapter. I think on your side, chapter 24. I think it's chapter 24. All right. So does anybody have a question over this chapter? Let me pause for a second, see if anybody has a question. All right, guys, if no question, let's look at the next chapter. So next chapter is it's pretty much all definition. It's production and growth. Now, guys, on the discussion post, if you look at the next week discussion post, it's very good subject. This is related to chapter 12. Let me see which definition you need to look over, and then you guys can read the book by yourself. Okay. Because for this chapter, there's not that much conceptual stuff behind it. So these are all definitions. All definitions. Definitions. This function over here. If you know what each letter stands for, then you know what you pretty much understand its function. So Y is your income or GDP. So GDP equals to A is your technology. So technology times a function of labor, capital, human capital, and natural resource. Okay, so just know what does each letter stand for. Let me skip all this, not important. Not important. Okay, so the catch-up effect. So it says the property where poor country tend to grow more rapidly than rich country. Let me give you example. So let's suppose we have two countries. Let me use a new table. So we have US and China. Now, let's just suppose the GDP in 1990 is I'm gonna throw a number in here. So let's say this is $18 billion. Okay. And the GDP for China, let's say, is $10 billion. So in 1990, GDP for US is much higher than China. And then the catch-up effect is it says that for a poor country, they tend to grow faster. So let's suppose US is growing at 3% per year. So let me do, so growth, so rate 3% per year, and let's say China grow by 6% per year. So they grow a little faster. Now catch-up effect means eventually China will catch up to US. So let's say for GDP in 2000, so 10 years later, we're gonna use 18 billion times 1 plus the growth rate, and then to the power of 10 years. Wait, what happened? Where did 28 come from? All right, so that's the GDP in US, and then let's do the same thing for China. That's Chinese GDP, so it's still less than US, but see how they're getting closer now. So let's do the GDP in 2020. So maybe by then they will catch up to US now. So same thing, this number times 1 plus the 3% power of 30. That's the US GDP. And then the Chinese GDP. See, by 2020, according to our calculation, Chinese GDP will be overtaking US GDP. So that's called the catch-up effect. That means when the poor country grow a little faster every year, eventually they will catch up to rich countries. Okay. And then really, if you look at the development of China, China is catching up because really 30 years ago, China is a very poor country. But now China has the second largest economy in the world. So they are catching up and they're actually surpassing many of the rich countries now. All right, so that's the growth catch-up effect. Definition. I think this is there's not that much information on this conceptual stuff, mostly definitions on this chapter. So if you guys read all the definitions, you should be good on this chapter. Right, let me see. Okay, so I think this is it for this chapter. Yeah, that's it. So does anybody have any questions on the app plan homeworks you want me to go over for these two chapters? Anybody, any questions? Let me wait for a second. Laura, any question, Laura? Misha, Magali, Rose, Dinah, Delapo? Anybody, any questions? Sandy? No questions? All right, guys, if no questions, let's end it here. And then remember, from this point on, when you guys check into the live meeting, you'll get 3 points each for each week. And then if you cannot participate in the live meeting, if you watch a recorded session, just make sure post your comment below the video, and then you get 2 points each on the test. Okay. All right, guys. If no question, let's take a pause here, and then we'll continue next week. And then, like I said, if you have any question, let me know. Send me email, and then I'll be more than happy to do a video for you. All right, guys. Good luck, and then let's meet again next week. Okay. See y'all later. Bye-bye.